Hey, what's up? My name's Cameron Doherty, and this is the NuPhy Air60 V2. Well, technically this is the new folio, but inside of the new folio is the Air60 V2. This is the little brother to the larger Air75 and Air96 models, both of which I've reviewed previously on the channel. It's got all of the incredible features that those models have, just with fewer keys. The small design, combined with this optional carrying case, makes this easily the most portable NuPhy product and one of the best portable keyboard offerings on the market. Now, NuPhy sent both this keyboard and the folio over to me for review. However, they did not have any say in the review. I will always point out those differentiators and deal breakers no matter where a product comes from. NuPhy was also kind enough to set up the Cameron Doherty Tech community with an exclusive discount, which is awesome. So if you want to pick up something for yourself, head on over to NuPhy.com and use the code Cameron to save 10%. If you take advantage of this deal, how about a little thanks for the coupon down in the comments? Links to everything are in the video description, and now let's jump into the details. It's impossible to talk about the Air60's build and design without addressing the tiny elephant in the room, which is that this thing is tiny. This is my first 60% keyboard, so I'm going to go into a bit of detail that some more experienced 60% buyers likely won't need. Feel free to skip ahead if that's you. Now, when you go with a 60% model, you're prioritizing small over all else. That means no function row across the top, so if you're somebody that uses those function buttons in your daily life, you may not like this. Alternate functions such as changing brightness or media controls, those are still present, but those are on the number row instead. Now, this also means that Bluetooth pairing for multi-device Bluetooth connections, which are usually on the 1, 2, and 3 buttons, have also been moved down. You can change between Bluetooth devices using function plus Q, W, and E. Now, this actually required me to consult the manual to figure out. I was a little bit clueless for a second to get this paired the first time I opened it up. So maybe NuPhy in the future, you could just put a small little indicator on Q, W, and E to help newbies like me out. Other key compromises include the right shift key, which is exceptionally small. If this is your primary shift key, which it is for me, it's a bit of a tricky adjustment. I honestly figured that this would make this keyboard absolutely unusable for me. But in reality, all it did was just slow me down a little bit and make sure that I paid a bit more attention to where my hands were placed at any given time. Somehow, I actually got used to this tiny little shift button. There's also no home and page up or page down buttons, which you'll sometimes see on a 65% layout. And there is no right control button. Finally, the delete key has been moved down and is next to the arrow keys in this very crowded little corner down here. This particular one I haven't really gotten used to. I think it's going to take a bit of muscle memory adaptation to get delete in my mind to move from up, usually above backspace, to down next to the arrows. Though I could probably get there eventually. Thankfully, there is a homing bump on the up arrow key, which will help you navigate around this bit of a chaotic corner a little bit better. Obviously, this is a lot of trade-offs. However, what you get in return is an incredibly small and incredibly portable device. What I've also noted from testing this keyboard is that the keyboard size allows you to reach everything without the need to move your hands around. I didn't expect this to be a very notable benefit, but if you're a typist, this can be really handy because everything is just a little bit closer to you. You're not ever having to move, it's just right there, ready to rip at any given time. This feels like it adds to the overall ergonomics to me, since I imagine frequently moving and contorting your wrists is probably a bit less ergonomic than finding a nice position and sticking to it. To enhance those ergonomics, there are 2-stage adjustable feet, which can be adjusted from the standard 3 degrees of typing angle up to 7 degrees and 10 degrees. I did validate that those numbers are correct. If you're used to larger keyboards like me, those angle numbers may seem a bit severe. However, in this case, the height of the back of the keyboard is actually exactly the same as the other Air models. The difference is that this is a shorter board, which causes the angle to be a bit more steep. geometry for the win. The rest of the design is classic NuPhy. There are 3 available colors. There's the lunar gray, ionic white, and this one, the basalt black. The white does remain my overall favorite. However, I like the black in person a lot more than I expected to like the black. Based on the pictures, I expected that this was going to be a little bit more glossy, but in person, it's actually a bit more matte, and it kind of looks sick as a result. It's also nice to have stronger contrast between the keycap color and the text color, since both other colors use white primary keycaps with gray writing, though the gray shades change a little bit. If your eyes need additional contrast to see clearly, the white text on the black keycaps here is a lot easier to read. In addition to the overall color, you can choose one of 7 different switch types. That's right, 7 different switch types. There's your classic red, brown, and blue, all of which are Gatoron 2.0 switches. Then there are some NuPhy specific switches, linear options called Aloe and Cowberry, and tactile ones called Wisteria and Moss. All options are hot swappable. I personally chose the Moss on this board since it's the last of those tactiles that I've never tried. I'll talk about what I think soon. Finally, you can add an accessory like the NuFolio V3. This synthetic leather carrying case is available in 2 different colors and can be added for $29, making this ultra small keyboard into the ultimate portable option. Though the Folio is available for any size NuPhy Air keyboard, the 60 is just made to be portable. It's very small, obviously, but it also has things like this side-mounted USB-C charging port, which is accessible even when it's within the Folio, which is super clutch. I'm going to make a full dedicated review video of the NuFolio. That'll come out soon, but for now, just know that it is pretty sweet if you want to travel with your keyboard. Plus, you can even fold it up and make a stand for use with your phone or tablet. I will link the new video in the description once it's complete. Jumping over to typing experience, this keyboard is part of the V2 iteration of the NuPhy Air lineup. As a result, it's got several enhancements over the original version. It moves from a die sub keycap to a double shot PBT keycap. It adds silicone to the spacebar to help with sound, and it adds additional layers of foam to the internals to help with sound absorption. The result is a very solid sounding keyboard. And before I jump straight into that sound test, I will call out that the Moss switches in particular are really solid for typing, especially if you like firm early bump tactile switches. However, that does mean that they are not quiet by any stretch. And so taking this on the go, going out to a coffee shop, things like that, Moss is probably not the best bet unless you want people to really notice you and probably to move away from you. I'm going to do a typing test with these Moss switches, and I'll also swap in the Wisteria switches from my Air96 and some Brown 2.0s that I have from a recent Keychron K3 Max review, so you'll get to hear all the different tactile options. Overall, I think that this keyboard sounds pretty great. The Moss switches are a bit loud for my taste, though I do really like the typing action. If you're someone who considers yourself a typist and loves tactile feedback, the mall switches are tough to beat. The Wisteria switches and Browns are much more all-arounders, something that a less discerning user would have no issue with whatsoever. From a feel perspective, Wisteria and Brown are almost identical. They feature nearly identical travel, force, etc. When I really focus on them, I feel a bit more of a tactile bump on the Wisteria, and I have a slight preference for the Wisteria sound as well. However, either one is solid. Which of the three do you prefer? Please let me know down in the comments. Switches aside, the Air60's typing experience is enhanced by some of my favorite keycaps on the market. The double-shot PBT keycaps are large, they're slightly concave, and they feel great to the touch. On my Air96, I truly put them to the test with daily use for over a year. They definitely did smooth and get some additional shine over the course of a year, but the PBT plastic held up great compared to what a comparable ABS keycap would have done. The upgraded Ghost bar is also very solid. It sounds quite nice, and it's almost the same sound as a regular keystroke, which is saying something. My only complaint with the overall feel of the board is that there seems to be a slight rattle. You can hear it if you either shake it or tap on the top case, so you can probably pick it up on the microphone. I think I've narrowed it down to these feet on the back, being just slightly loose. Now, this wasn't the case with my Air96 that had the pop-out feet as well, so it may just be a small fit and finish issue with my particular board. I also don't think that it impacts the typing sound in any sort of noticeable way, at least. It's really just a matter of it feeling slightly less premium when you pick it up or move around the keyboard. Hopefully it's just something with my specific board and not all of them. Moving over to functionality and features, the first and most obvious call out on the Air60 are the Air feet on the back. We've already touched on the fact that these orange feet at the top open up in order to provide different typing angles. But in addition, the Air60's feet are specifically designed to be placed on top of the MacBook's keyboard in order to provide a better typing experience in that same laptop footprint. Since the Air60 doesn't have a top function row, it's small enough to fit either at the top or at the bottom of the keyboard. Either one works just fine. In testing, it still feels a little odd to me as someone who typically works from a desk with monitors. However, it really does allow you to have a much better typing experience on a laptop while still feeling like you're working from a laptop. It's kind of a little bit trippy in that way. Overall, I'd say it's not for me. But once again, if you are a typist writing a novel on a MacBook, this could be the perfect setup to craft your next masterpiece. Plus, if you're on the go with your MacBook, then shout out again to the NuFolio, which can help make your setup super easy to travel with. Every model of the NuPhy Air series features full RGB backlighting, which can be tweaked with a few different function commands. I often like to use just a solid background color on my keyboards. And one thing that I note with NuPhy's RGB in particular is that there seems to be more granular color selection on their boards than a lot of the others that I've used. It's not something I've validated in any sort of scientific way, but it just seems like you can really hone your color extremely precisely, which is kind of cool. In addition to the regular RGB, there continue to be RGB light bars on both sides of the board. I don't remember seeing anything advertising these as being improved in V2, but they look visibly more clear. It's like they had been in standard definition and then suddenly they were turned to HD. I'm not sure whether this will come through on camera, since these lights in particular always seem to look absolutely terrible when I try to film them as B-roll, but hey, maybe this time will be different. One particularly interesting change with the Air V2 series is that they changed the bottom of the case to a transparent ABS plastic material. It allows you to see through to the color-matched internals as well as see the bottom of the RGB lights when they're on. This is pretty unnecessary as it's going to face directly down onto your desk 99.9% of the time, but hey, I will admit it does look cool. Now, a bit of transparency that I think looks less cool is the spacebar. For some reason, the bit directly above the LED allows for the light to shine through. It also makes the color look very red or orangish due to the yellow keycap color. Would love to see this resolved since it's a bit distracting from the rest of the appearance when you're using the backlighting. We've already covered the unique layout resulting from the 60% design, but one other thing that I wanted to mention was the keycaps on the top number row. I get really thrown off looking at these keycaps with there being 3 different things on it. I also think that if I were designing this board, I probably would have swapped the 2 symbols on each key. Since, for example, having the number 1 and the exclamation point next to each other would be a more normal setup. I think moving the brightness symbol up to the top would just make more sense, at least to my brain. This would also make it align with the other NuPhy keyboards, which have these function symbols at the top of the function keys. I'm not sure why they chose to do it in this different manner. It's not the end of the world, but maybe in V3 they could reverse them to make it look a bit more natural. I do want to commend them on the color choice though. The subtle teal that they used is a great improvement from the bright yellow symbols they used in the first version of the Air60. On the connectivity front, you can connect via a wired mode with the side-mounted USB-C port. There is multi-device Bluetooth capabilities, which I mentioned before are controllable with function plus Q, W, and E. And finally, there is an included 2.4 gig USB receiver. If you want to use this keyboard to game, both the wired and USB connections operate at 1000 Hz polling. This edition of 1000 Hz was introduced with this V2 version of the Air lineup. V2 also brought QMK and VIA support, allowing for greater customization of your Air keyboard. Finally, the battery on the Air60 is 2500 milliamp hours, which is a bit smaller than the 4000 milliamp hour batteries found in the Air75 and Air96, but can still reach an advertised 150 hours of use with the backlighting off. I've been testing this keyboard and wrote this entire script with it. I've had the lights on and only used about 40% of the charge. I've had a great experience with the 4000 milliamp hour battery in the Air60, and it seems like this one is also quite solid for my uses. Now it's time for value and pricing. The Air60 comes in at $110 plus shipping. Remember though, you can save 10% on this on NuPhy.com with code Cameron. This pricing is right on par with one of the most obvious competitors. The Keychron K7 Max is a 65% model, which comes in at $114. I recently reviewed the K3 Max, which is the 75% version, if you want to see what that's all about. In both cases, you're getting a very premium keyboard and a pretty solid price. I think it's pretty tough to find a keyboard with more features than the NuPhy Air for less money. You can absolutely find discount models in the sub $100 category, but to get something as premium as this, $100 is definitely the floor these days. To recap, for the $110 price tag on the Air60 V2, you get differentiators like the creative NuPhy design with 3 distinct colors. There's the strong switch offerings, in addition to the classic red, brown, and blue options. Now, these switches add to the excellent typing experience thanks to the sound dampening foam, features like the Ghost Bar, and all the benefits that come for typists when you don't need to move your hands around with such a small design. Now, this build is also quality and solid, which I can personally attest to having used the Air96 for more than a year in the past. Finally, you have the incredible portability of the Air60 and the optional NuFolio, plus the AirFeet option if you'd like to use this on top of a MacBook. The result is a very, very solid keyboard. The only deal breakers that I've identified are the smaller battery compared to other NuPhy models, though it is still bigger than what Keychron is putting in their models. There were a few smaller issues like the spacebar shine through, slightly rattly feet, and number keycaps that I would have done slightly differently. Finally, this particular model may be too small for some, as adjusting to the small shift key, a relocated delete key, and other changes could be challenging. These deal breakers are not a deal breaker for me. Though I don't see myself permanently switching over to a 60% keyboard, I now totally get why some people absolutely love these. They're not for everyone, but writing out the script for this video with the Air60 was a surprisingly fun experience. There is definitely a chance that this keyboard stays within reach for times when I need to get some serious writing done. After all, I need to keep churning out content for you guys, right? Speaking of, have you hit that subscribe button yet? If not, you should. We've had a ton of great content recently, and I'm not slowing down anytime soon. We're also setting the goal of getting to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so join the cause today and help make that dream a reality. I appreciate each and every one of you who do, and even the ones who don't. I'll see you in the next one.